The Sacramento Zoo was founded in 1927. The zoo's executive director, Jason Jacobs, joins me to talk about the zoo and its future. And make sure you stay tuned, because we'll be joined on set at the end with some special animal guests. Next on Studio Sacramento.
For over 20 years, Five Star Bank has created thoughtful solutions to help the capital region thrive. From economic development and education to public health and safety, issues that are vitally important to Sacramento's prosperity. We're proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
Jason, why does any major city, but specifically Sacramento, need a zoo?
Zoos are cornerstones of any great community. There's many reasons why we have zoos. Number one is education. People were able to come to a zoo and see things that they would never see anywhere else without traveling to great lengths and spending huge amount of money. For instance, we get over 500,000 visitors a year coming to the Sacramento Zoo. They could see lions there without having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to go on safari. We also have zoos for conservation. We support many endangered species, and there would be species that would be extinct today if it were not for zoos. Species right here in California, like the California Condor. And third, a quality of life. I mean, people enjoy going to a zoo. Last year, over 180 million visitors in accredited zoos throughout the United States. It's an incredible number.
Wow. Now, you mentioned the California Condor. Tell us a little bit about that story. You say that zoos helped save the condor?
Correct. In 1987, there were only 22 condors left. And some people back then were saying, oh, you can't capture them and put them in zoos. But they captured the remaining wild condors. They were going to go extinct, most likely, if something wasn't done. And now today, there's over 400 condors, thanks to the captive breeding programs of San Diego Zoo Global and the Los Angeles Zoo. They were the first two zoos to get involved. There are a couple other zoos involved now, and there's a reintroduction program where condors are now flying freely over California and Arizona and other parts of the United States. But that's just one example. I mean, even looking back 100 years ago, the American bison would be extinct today if it weren't for zoos.
Really?
Yes, they were on the brink of extinction 100 years ago. Other species like the black-footed ferret, the golden lion tamarin, even a species that we have here at Sacramento Zoo, the thick-billed parrot, critically endangered. We have bred more of them than any other zoo in the world. We are leaders in their husbandry. There's many species that would be extinct if it were not for zoos.
Now, you all are proximate, okay, in terms of our geography, to UC Davis, who has this world-renowned school of veterinary medicine. Do you guys do any work with them?
We have a huge partnership with them. Zoological medicine, a large proportion of it was pioneered at the Sacramento Zoo by one of their veterinarians who's now left us, Dr. Murray Fowler. He was the board chair for many years of the zoo. All of our veterinarians are UC Davis veterinarians. We have a student's residency program for exotic animal medicine at the Sacramento Zoo, and the Sacramento Zoo has worked with UC Davis to train more zoo veterinarians than almost any other facility in the world. It's incredible.
Wow. So, you talked about education, you've talked about conservation, now you're talking about trailblazing with regards to the care of these animals. What do you consider the core mission of the Sacramento Zoo?
I believe it's threefold. I really believe it's education, conservation, and recreation, all three. You can't have one without the others. If you have conservation and education programs, but you have dirty restrooms and you don't have good food and you don't have good exhibits, it's gonna be really hard to educate and inspire and get people to make a difference for wildlife. It really, all three have to come together to create a great zoological experience.
I'm curious, in this age of the internet and so many things that compete for people's attention, who do you consider to be the zoo's audience?
I think the audience is everyone. A successful zoo needs to be as many different things to so many different members of the community to be successful. So obviously, we have a lot of school groups that come and visit, But we also have senior groups come out for a program called Tea and Tours that our docents teach.
Tea and tours.
Tea and Tours. We have partnerships with breweries that release types of beer related to endangered species, with the proceeds going to help those species in the wild.
All right, you got to tell us more about that. We you know, from UC Davis a while ago, we had sort of the professor of beer on here, and I don't know if you've ever met him or not, but I would be curious to know what sort of beer is tied to an endangered
Well,
species.
there is Red Panda Ale, and there's one for giraffe, one for okapi, and it's getting people who might not necessarily go to the zoo getting interested in the zoo for something else. So really, zoos can exist for so many different people. We have special events, we have special dining opportunities, behind the scenes tours, or if you just want to buy a general admission ticket, you could take a safari around the world without ever leaving Sacramento.
Well, when you talk about taking a safari around the world, so I first went to the zoo when I was in 5th grade in 1973.
All right.
To the Sacramento Zoo, and I fell in love with the place. How is the zoo today different than the zoo I experienced when I was 10 years old?
Well, I would say number one, the animals are, we look more into quality of life, right? Things change. The staff that was working there in 1973 did a very good job by 1973 standards, but you wouldn't use a computer from the late 1970s as a household computer today.
No.
It's just not the same. The majority of our buildings date from the 1960s, 70s, and early 80s. What you would also notice different from the 70s to today is that we've lost 75% of the collection, of the animal collection.
What? You've lost 75%?
75% of the animals that you would have seen in the 1970s are gone from the zoo's collection.
Like what? Like who?
Hippopotamus, bears, tigers, cheetahs, elephants, baboons, lots of different primates, cats, birds. We simply don't have the space for the animals. That's what it boiled down to.
Okay, well, hold on for a second. Take us back then. You don't have the space for the animals. Give us some statistics on the zoo. Tell us a little bit about what drove the loss of all those animals. You say that you don't have the space. What happened?
We're 14 and a half acres. That's it. And if you look at how zoos were built in the 60s and 70s, there wasn't the emphasis on the quality of life that we know about today. I'm putting it in context. The exhibits that the Sacramento Zoo had in the 60s and 70s looked very similar at the time to exhibits that were built at the Los Angeles Zoo and the San Diego Zoo. Concrete grottos that gave the illusion of the animals having more space. But since that time, those zoos have renovated and expanded and torn down, but they have more land. And so, we still have cages from the 1960s. Those cages are empty. They're devoid of animals, but a few of the animals still live in these spaces.
Okay, well, I'm glad you raised this because I want us to talk about this a little bit. So the Sacramento Zoo is 14 acres.
Mm-hmm.
The San Diego Zoo is 100 acres plus, and the San Francisco Zoo is 100 acres plus. How did we get so far behind? Or have we always been behind? If you went back to, I don't know what year would be that you'd anchor to, 1957 or whenever it is, but were we always behind, or is this a recent phenomenon?
Historically, if you look at what our collection was in the 70s and 60s, I don't think we were behind. I think what happened is in the 1980s, when zoos started building larger spaces for animals, there was a push to relocate the zoo. Well, not relocate, expand the zoo within Land Park. And that was defeated. That was defeated by the neighborhood. The zoo wanted to, the city and the zoo created a master plan which would have expanded the zoo into the park to give the animals more space, and that didn't happen. And since that time, there's been, the last 30 years, there's been a gradual decline in the number of animals. If you had gone to the zoo even 20 years ago, you would have seen polar bears, brown bears, hippos, cheetahs, tigers. They're all gone.
Well, you're shocking me right now because while I haven't been there in a number of years, my expectation is that the polar bears and the hippos and the tigers would be at the zoo if I visited today.
Right.
And I'm really surprised to hear that.
Well, you should, it's interesting when you talk to kids even, and they expect to see a tiger or a hippo or, because we're a big city. We're fairly large, and if you look at zoos in communities like Wichita, Kansas, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Battle Creek, Michigan. They have larger sites for their zoo than Sacramento does. We also look at best practices amongst other zoos. The fact that we're landlocked, we have 14 acres, and parking is a real challenge in Land Park. We should be doing 1 million visitors a year when we look at similar communities rather than the 500,000 visitors we have. But it all boils down to probably the decrease in animal collection and the challenging accessibility of the location within Land Park.
Well, 500,000 still sounds like a pretty impressive number overall, but I do have to ask you the question. There are, I don't know how many voices there are, but there are some very loud voices who say that zoos are anachronisms, and that, as a matter of fact, that just the mere presence of having a zoo and taking animals out of their natural habitats is a harm and a detriment to their care and their existence. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, when people talk about taking animals out of their natural habitats, that's not what zoos do. The only reason we take an animal from the wild is a last-ditch effort to save a species from extinction, or if the animal's a rescue. Like our pelican at the zoo is a rescue animal. If it was left in the wild, it would have died. A zoo I worked at, we rescued grizzly bears. It would have been euthanized. So that's thoughts from a bygone past, right? Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I would love to meet these people one-on-one. And when I do meet these people, I talk to them about the benefits of the zoo and what we really do. And 99% of the time, I can get them to change their mind.
So you actually do engage with those that are critics?
Of course. Of course, you have to have a dialogue. And a lot of times it's because, it's like you said, people think we're out there, we go to Africa every year and capture a bunch of animals. No, not at all. And like I said, over 180 million people visited accredited zoos in the United States last year. I don't see even a fraction of that number outside of our front gate protesting to shut us down.
Many of these same critics also essentially say that zoos are part of sort of an entire genre of activities. Zoos, circuses, for-profit showcases like a Marine World or Sea World or something like that. What is the distinction in your mind between those types of activities that involve animals and a zoo?
Well, the majority of AZA zoos are private, nonprofit
And AZA
institution.
is?
Association of Zoological, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. It is the gold standard for accreditation and keeping animals under human care in the United States. It's very strict standards to be accredited by this organization. The majority of zoos in that organization, the large zoos you would think of, are private nonprofits. They are not. We are a nonprofit with a mission of conservation education. And so I think that's what differentiates us a bit. But you know, there are for-profit entities that keep animals, like Disney's Animal Kingdom and Busch Gardens, that do fantastic work. The Disney Conservation Fund, which is overseen by Disney's Animal Kingdom, has supported many conservation projects around the world. And so I think sometimes it's about having a dialogue with these people and showing them, lifting up the curtains and saying, look, this is what we're really doing. If this is what you thought the zoo of the past is, it might have been like that, but this is what we do now.
Well, let's turn now to not only the Sacramento Zoo today, but the zoo in the future. What do you consider to be the biggest, and whether you want to couch it as a challenge or an opportunity, that faces the zoo at this moment?
The biggest challenge is that we are a nonprofit. We get by on a very, very small subsidy. 3% of our budget comes from the city, and we have to have the right business operation to meet our mission. The zoo has had about 500,000 visitors consistently since we started charging for admission in 1965. The zoo has been at its current site since 1927.
1927?
Correct. The cost to operate a zoo go up every year, and unless we can significantly increase attendance, we're not going to offset the cost.
So how are you going to do that?
Our board in April of 2018 voted unanimously to pursue relocation of the Sacramento Zoo. This has been talked about for the past 30 years, but it is essential from a business operation, but much more so from an animal welfare situation.
Well, let me ask you a question on that, because I got a couple numbers that's interesting. You guys, to put a pin in it, you guys get $332,000, according to the last budget I saw, from the city of Sacramento. First off, the Sacramento Zoo, while it's in the city of Sacramento, it would seem to me it's a regional entity, it draws from a regional audience.
It totally does.
Okay.
We have people from all over.
All right,
coming.
so stay with me here. The Golden One Center got a subsidy of $223 million from the city. MLS is targeted for our new soccer expansion for $33 million. Entities like Powerhouse Science Center, the Crocker, and others are slated to get significant support from the city. Why is it that the zoo doesn't garner that level of support, not just from the city of Sacramento, but as a regional entity from the region itself?
Well, look, May 28th, Mayor and Council voted 9-0 to pursue a relocation feasibility study. We're working with the city of Sacramento right now on a scenario for relocation. And our board has talked with the city of Sacramento to let it be known that there is going to need a public investment needed. Just like there's been a public investment in the zoo in Fresno, in Oakland, in Los Angeles, and many other zoos throughout the United States. It's time, it's the zoo's turn, and we know that all those other great amenities that you just mentioned, we can play a huge part. When we benchmark against other zoos in similar sized markets, we should draw 1 million visitors a year if we have the right site. And we're talking about, the new zoo, it'll be a phased approach. But we want to design something that will attract 1 million visitors per year or more to Sacramento and complement everything else that you just mentioned.
Well, let me ask you a quick question on that. You have 500,000 visitors a year, and you say you should have 1 million. For the 500,000 that didn't show up because of parking and other reasons, what exhibit over the past few years would you say that you all are most proud of that you wish more people had seen?
Well, we just opened in February of 2019 a habitat for okapi, incredibly endangered, rare mammal from the Democratic Republic of Congo. We support the conservation of that species in the wild, empowering women in the DRC to have businesses. You take care of the people, they're going to take care of the animals. This habitat was built in-house by staff. Staff, trustees, volunteers, everybody worked together. And we are one of only 3 institutions on the West Coast to display the species, the other being San Diego Zoo Global and the Los Angeles Zoo. It's something that Sacramento should really be proud of, and they are magnificent animals.
I wanted to ask you this. How'd you get so lucky? You have the job that all of us as kids when we were in elementary school wanted to have. How'd you fall into this?
When I was in kindergarten, they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, zookeeper. And I've been working in zoos. I started as a volunteer when I was 13 at Zoo Miami, and they hired me when I was 17. And I've been working in zoos ever since. It'll be 30 years next year. So it's a long time in zoos, and I love what I do. I work with a bunch of passionate people, and my job as the director is to find them the resources they need to do their job. Because if you think I'm passionate, you should meet my staff. They're incredible.
And we're going to return in a moment with some special guests to continue the conversation. And we are back, and we've brought friends with us. Jason, tell us who we have here.
This is Bradshaw, a boa constrictor, and Bradshaw's handler, Kate.
Yeah, Bradshaw here is a Colombian boa.
Well, Bradshaw is a very good-looking fellow and has a mighty strong grip. I'm a real estate developer by training, and this kind of reminds me of some of the people who financed my loans. Bradshaw would do very well in a business environment.
Well, Bradshaw meets a lot of kids. He's an animal ambassador at the Sacramento Zoo.
Wow. And now, are there still a lot of snakes at the zoo?
Yes, we still have a reptile house, and we have several snakes that live in the interpretive center where these ladies work, Kate and Brooke, and they take them out to meet a bunch of people, our 500,000 visitors every year.
Now, Kate, tell us really quickly, how does Bradshaw live? What do you feed him?
So he actually gets about a rat a week. And so he can eat something roughly as big as his widest part that's holding on to you right there. And so they can handle something fairly large, but obviously not something insanely huge because of how their jaws kind of open up. So they kind of expand to allow him to eat something bigger than his head.
He seems really calm.
Yeah, he's just kind of, they're often kind of more that ambush style usually. So they have a lot of time where he's not ambushing now, but they have a lot of time where they are just sitting, gathering energy, maintaining their body, as opposed to just being very active and having to move around a lot to get that food.
All right. Well, Bradshaw, thanks for hanging out with me. And like I said, you remind me of some of the people I've known in the lending business from my past. Thank you very much. All right. So who do we have next? Who is our friend right here?
This is Julia, and Julia is a thick-billed parrot, and she was hatched with a birth defect, so she's not really able to fly. So she gets a lot of special care at the zoo, but really she's an incredible ambassador for a critically endangered species. The thick-billed parrot is only found in Mexico and in Arizona, one of only 2 species of parrots that were ever actually native to the United States. The other is extinct, actually.
Really?
And the Sacramento Zoo is a leader in the husbandry of this species. We've hatched more than any other zoo in the world. We have a flock of over 20 at the front of the zoo. We would love to do a reintroduction program for this species. We don't have the space to accomplish this in the land park site.
Another reason why the expansion is
correct.
called for.
We would like to relocate so we can make a large commitment to this species and help save it.
Absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then we have a little tiny friend right here.
Absolutely. This is Ariel. She's an African pygmy hedgehog. And I'll go ahead and set her down so you can see her move around.
Hi,
they
Ariel.
are found in the grasslands of Africa, but she actually came to us from the pet trade. She was found as an illegal pet here in California, swimming in someone's backyard swimming pool.
Oh, you're kidding.
So we named her Ariel because we thought she wanted to be the Little Mermaid.
So this was actually more of a rescue.
Yes, this was a rescue situation. Hedgehogs are commonly brought on as pets, even though they don't make very good pets. And so unfortunately, a lot of them are released out into the wilds of California when people aren't quite ready to take care of them.
Now, one thing I'm curious about Ariel is Ariel seems very small. For some reason, I always was under the impression that hedgehogs were a lot larger than this. Brooke, is this the typical size for a hedgehog?
This is the typical size for this species of hedgehog. This is the species that lives in Africa, but there are species that live in Europe that grow much larger.
Okay. Jason, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. I'm curious. Do these animals actually travel a lot, at least around to the area, or interact with kids? And
Yes,
others?
they go to schools, senior centers, libraries. They actually, in the spring, we have daily demonstrations at the zoo in the amphitheater where you can meet Kate and Brooke and all their animal friends and learn about what you can do to help animals.
Tell us this. The city's going to do a feasibility study coming up in order to get you the expansion so that our friends here and all of their friends back at the zoo have more room to have the types of habitats that they would thrive in. I have to ask you the other side of the story. What happens if the zoo doesn't move?
You'll see more large animals leaving the land park site, specifically our great apes, most likely in the next decade. We just don't have the space for these animals, especially with the current zoological practices. So that's what you're going to see, and you'll see smaller animals. And Julia's great, and we do a great job saving the thick-billed parrots. But it's easier for me to put a lion on a billboard or a tiger and get people in, and that's how we can help thick-billed parrots. All the animals have a story to tell, but it's those charismatic megavertebrates, the animals that capture the hearts and minds of our visitors, that are umbrella species. Thereby having them, we're able to save many other species like the thick-billed parrot.
Tell us what we all can do in terms of supporting the zoo's mission and helping the zoo to have to provide the services that it's historically provided for. How many years?
Over 92 years now.
92 years.
You can become a member of the zoo, you can visit the zoo, and if you want to see the zoo move, you could definitely write, if you live within the city of Sacramento, write your council member or the mayor and tell them how you believe in the vision to create a better zoo for our animals, better place for the community.
Any talk at all about the region getting involved outside of the city? Just very quickly.
We're in conversations all the time with our regional leadership, the politicians from throughout the state, and we'll see. The story is still unfolding, but we hope it ends with a larger zoo for these animals.
Regional amenity and regional treasure.
Correct.
Thank you all very much. Really wonderful. Thank you for helping me to make some new friends.
Absolutely.
All right. And that's our show. Thanks to our guests, and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. We'll see you next time right here on KVIE.
For over 20 years, Five Star Bank has created thoughtful solutions to help the capital region thrive. From economic development and education to public health and safety, issues that are vitally important to Sacramento's prosperity. We're proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.